This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome on into the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante. 2 o'clock Monday afternoon, live on YouTube and then available on all podcast platforms in the aftermath. The New York Yankees are playing a baseball game right now against the Tampa Bay Rays, but for all intents and purposes, the series has already been lost, even though it was a 4-game series, regardless of the outcome here, because of the previous events of the weekend. We're going to mostly be talking about those, because those are what we have. Those are what are angering us, and those are what are setting up a trade deadline in just over a week, 6 p.m. Tuesday, July 30th. The New York Yankees have 8 days plus a few hours to complete numerous transactions to fill multiple holes across every segment of the roster, or they won't do that. They'll fail. They'll struggle in their ability to compete for the rest of the season because of roster issues that manifested over the course of June and July that were evident to most before the season started, but we allowed ourselves to have hope when May was as fun as it was. And if you remember correctly, they actually started off this season 10-2, but ended up at 14-12 in April because they were 4-0 in March. And then April, they were kind of middling. And then May, they were extremely good. In June, they started hot, got ice cold. Either way, here we are with a Yankee team that a couple weeks ago, people were agitating me on Twitter being like, should they sell? And the answer is obviously no, and they shouldn't sell, and they shouldn't have sold then, and they shouldn't sell now. I'm also not sure what they would sell. But they're probably closer to a hybrid retool thing than just a straight buy because there's dead weight on the roster, so many remaining issues, and it's worth wondering if it's even worth solving. It's obviously worth refreshing, but is it even possible to solve the staleness of this current roster that opened the second half with an emphatic win behind a resurgent Garrett Cole on Friday night and then had 2 of the most lifeless games you could imagine from a wild card leader, wild card contender on Saturday and Sunday against a team that, for all intents and purposes, is ready to sell in the Rays. The Rays have scouts at the Tampa games, the Tarpons games. They're ready to give some of their talent away. They're still hitting 7 home runs in 2 games, turning around a deficiency that they've had all year long. They don't hit the long ball. They do against the New York Yankees. Ugly, ugly weekend that should set a tone for either a massive amount of turnaround at the deadline or a shrug as we go about our lives and sort of get unenthused by the rest of the second half to come. Joining me as always, though, to talk out what's worth messing around with on this roster is Thomas Carannante, who will start us with a word from our sponsors and then transition into 50 minutes of anger.
What else is new? That's why we're here, folks. Caesar Sportsbook, though, they got something to say first. They're looking to cover your first bet up to $1,000. New customers will get a second chance bet. Once again, up to $1,000 when you sign up with our promo code YGY1000. That means if your first bet loses, you will get your full wager returned as a bonus bet up to $1,000. Caesars offers daily profit boosts as well as Caesars rewards credits on every wager, which can be redeemed for bonuses, sports tickets, and other VIP experiences. Signing up with our code YGY1000 not only covers that first bet, but it also gets you access to their fantastic rewards program. If you're looking to join Caesars, go download the app and register with our promo code, which is, again, YGY1000, to make sure your first bet is covered. This offer is only available to new customers, so tell your family, friends, anybody else looking to join who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. I don't know. I just don't know. I feel like Owen Wilson in Wedding Crashers, when nothing matters anymore.
Yeah.
After he loses Rachel McAdams, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Look, they're up 4-0 right now. It's cool. My dumbass, sorry guys, thought it was a series loss. Forgot there was a game today.
It's a crazy schedule. It's very weird that there are 3 straight day games with a wraparound, no days off before the Subway Series.
Mm-hmm. But again, feels like a loss. Feels like a loss. Feels like you should probably take 3 from the Rays at home when you have the edge in pitching matchups. When you start off the series in the manner in which they did with Garrett Cole, kind of, to me, that was Garrett Cole announcing he is back. That is 2 straight starts of 6+ innings, went over 100 pitches. To me, he got his regular rehab assignment in the minor leagues, and then he got his MLB rehab assignment with those 4 starts before or 5 starts, I'm sorry, before the All-Star break. And now here he is. Like, this is it. And they just it's becoming more and more evident to me that they're going to waste it. They're going to waste getting back the best pitcher in baseball from last season, which no other team had the luxury of getting at any point. I know the Yankees were put in a bad spot by him going down, but they had also lost him, managed to persevere, and then gave it all back. And now they're continuing to give it back. 9-20 in their last 29 games. Again, even a split today with a win doesn't feel great. You're heading into the Subway Series. Luis Severino's talking shit on you because they know that you're bad. I don't know what hope there is for this team, and I'll have a rant on Aaron Boone in a little while because I am upset with him. I didn't add that. I just thought of it now because I remember I had compiled a bunch of tweets and didn't put it in the podcast document. So sometimes that's how it goes, folks. I'm just looking at stuff on my social media, randomly getting mad, and then adding it in to our podcast outline. But I think it's worth talking. They're just not winning enough. And again, they have to work to get out of this funk. And winning, losing, winning, losing is not going to get it. They need to figure out a way to go back on a streak, to find some sort of consistency. And it's just Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. And I cannot believe all of this chatter about going after starting pitching at the trade deadline. They are going to give away all of their assets for another really good pitcher when that pitcher is not going to get run support. This team needs bats, and it needs a revamp of the roster, whether it's cutting dead weight, whether it's relegating guys to bench duty, whether it's trimming the edges off the roster of these guys who probably shouldn't be here on a World Series team. I just can't believe we're discussing. We even have a thought of Garrett Crochet and Tarek Skubal. There's no need for either of them at this moment in time.
Yeah, we'll talk about all of that as the episode goes. I mean, honestly, look, again, focusing on the past. Remember when we used to recap series? We used to be like, what were the moments in the series that felt good to you? Like, at this juncture, like, it's crazy, but the on-field performance feels so secondary because they win occasionally, but they lose 2 out of every 3 games they play. And you're left thinking, very occasionally you could be tricked in being like, all right, I mean, they won 2 or 3 in Baltimore before the break, and they won the first game Friday night behind Garrett Cole's excellent performance. That's 3 out of 4. There's a big gap in between. It wasn't organic, but you're starting to put something together. You're not saying they're going to win at the clip they were winning at in May, but like, okay, all right. They took 3 out of 4 here. Maybe you drop 1. Saturday's game, Taj Bradley has been on an absolute smoker lately. He's got like an 0.82 ERA in his last 6 starts or whatnot. And so if Nestor is a tick off, you might lose that. Turned out he was multiple ticks off in the latest instance of a Yankee embarrassing
done
social media and then embarrassing themselves in public.
Is he done?
I think, well, look, should we just move on to the trade deadline portion of this conversation? Because this Yankees team is 5-13 in their last 18 home games. They go to Boston, they go to Philly in the next week before the deadline even occurs. So good luck with all that. Apparently home road doesn't matter for these guys because, again, 5-13 in their last 18 home games. Alex Verdugo, the worst numbers for a regular at any position since June 15th, hitting in the 140s, rolling over balls to second base routinely. Worse left field numbers than Aaron Hicks and Joey Gallo, significantly too. So it's not like Max Goodman tweeted it out earlier. Hicks in left field had like a 103 WRC. I got to get the before we go to the. I'm so jabbered, y'all. Like there's so much to talk about, but I'd rather talk about the trade deadline than talk about this. But Max Goodman had the recent left fielders that the Yankees have had since Brett Gardner. Yeah, from 2020 to now. Hicks had a 103 WRC plus in 244 plate appearances in left field. Presumably most of those were before he absolutely fell off a cliff. Gallo was at 102, 712 OPS. We all know how useless Joey Gallo was. His numbers were worse than that when he wasn't playing left, but he's an average ball player for 350 plate appearances in left field. Clint Frazier, 96, just below average. Brett Gardner, 93, well below average, but these are guys putting up 6 681 OPS, 680 OPS. Verdugo on the year, 82 WRC plus, the worst of them all. 639 OPS. Again, 700 is like acceptable bad. Somebody has a 700 OPS. It's like, ugh, that's not very good. But I guess we can absorb that when we have guys putting up 800, 850 elsewhere in the lineup. 640 for Alex Verdugo and dropping. So that's a huge hole. Infield, the pieces aren't there. I was at the game yesterday. You go to a game, it doesn't take a genius to realize why they're struggling. You look at the numbers as they tick by in the lineup, and even Ben Rice, who's been the third best hitter on this team since he was called up, has an OPS in the mid 700s and is hitting like 217. He's a rookie.
211.
Scott called up. He's had moments. Big fan, but that's like the other highlight on the scoreboard outside of Judge Soto. It's like Rice's mid 700s OPS. Wells is at a hot month, but he's in the 680s. Volpe's numbers bad. Torres bad. And you're seeing 230 averages, and you're seeing very little power when they flash on the scoreboard. And you're like, of course these guys aren't doing damage. They haven't done damage all year, and we're getting to the end of July. People's seasons aren't just going to turn on a dime. Maybe one season will turn on a dime. Austin Wells made real tangible progress over the last month. But you're telling me this whole lineup is just going to go from being 220 hitters with no power to 270 hitters with moderate power? I doubt it. So worth talking about the trade deadline now, because a lot of folks have the Yankees being very aggressive. It was a Bob Nightingale column that basically said, who's going to be most aggressive at the deadline. This came out yesterday. It was like Yankees, Dodgers, Padres, Mariners. Now, take that for what it's worth. The Yankees obviously have to be aggressive in theory because they have Juan Soto for another 2 months. This team is in a playoff spot right now. If they're not aggressive, if you're trying to predict who's going to be aggressive, then I don't know why you wouldn't throw the Yankees out there because they're in a precarious position. The Dodgers, of course. The Padres, AJ Preller is always aggressive. The Mariners are at the edges of the playoff field, nearly leading the AL West, and they can't hit. And they also just put Ty France on waivers.
And DePoto's crazy.
So if you ask me who's going to be aggressive, I would say the two biggest market teams under the most pressure and the two teams with crazy executives. That doesn't really tell me much about actual predictive metrics about the deadline. It's just like, yeah, those teams, two of them have to go off and two of them always do. So I'll say they're aggressive. The Yankees were listed as best fits, potential landing spots in this morning's Tim Britton and Aaron Gleeman column on The Athletic. They've got the Yankees basically being in the mix for everybody. Like Skubal, they're one of the top 3 landing spots. Crochet, they're not listed, but we all know that they are theoretically involved there. Isaac Paredes, they're listed as a potential landing spot. Just reporting, I've got to find a few more because they were just everywhere. Jack Flaherty, they're the number 1 team listed. Yandy Diaz, they're the number 1 team listed. Christian Walker, Jazz Chisholm. I mean, they're being floated in essentially the prediction jumble for every target who will be floated to the 50% of the trade deadline targets. That's going to, in my opinion, only be the case if there's some subtraction. Gleyber Torres reached the end of his rope in 2022, but found himself on this team for another 2 years. I think his time on this team is probably, if it's not ending, it has to end. Alex Verdugo has to be replaced if this team is serious. Jason Dominguez was the guy. Can't be counted on to come back from injury in time. Got to be shopping for an outfielder. And Nestor Cortez, which is where this conversation started before it spiraled, I am sort of convinced had Gleyber Torres syndrome. I think he knows more than the public is privy to right now. I don't know why he tweeted in the middle of the All-Star game that everybody wants to be a Yankee and they're jealous of the gold standard and we compete every year. Weird. My theory was that David Ortiz, it lined up somewhat with David Ortiz in the dugout, tapping on Yankees enemies and saying, beat the Yankees. But is that really going to beat the Yankees is going to annoy Nestor Cortez enough that he's going to go pop off and tweet about how everybody wants to be us, but they ain't us or whatever? Like it's, it is an explanation. Is it a good one? Not really. And then he goes out there and has a Gleyber Torres at the 2022 trade deadline-esque start in response. He gets embarrassed by the Rays. Again, Taj Bradley's been amazing. If you're going to win that game, you're going to have to go toe-to-toe. You're going to have to win it 2-1 or whatever. And the Yankees offense has been awful lately, and they were predictably awful in that game. Nestor was way off, nibbling around Taylor Walls and Alex Jackson, giving up home runs to the worst hitters in a lineup that doesn't hit home runs. His worst start I'll go as far as to say his worst start in pinstripes because he's usually dominant at home. Felt like he was feeling the pressure of this maybe being his last start in pinstripes because if Brian Cashman, the trade deadline this year needs to look like 2022 for the Yankees to have a chance, which means a lot of moves. Brian Cashman has to hit on them at a higher rate than he did in 2022. But in 2022, what did they do? Made a fleet of moves, some very unexpected. No one expected them to bring in Scott Efros with 5 years of control. Some went completely off the board. And they also subtracted from the major league roster, determining that Jordan Montgomery was not worthy of a playoff start, and they got rid of him before it became an issue. Is Nestor Cortez worthy of a playoff start right now with Clark Schmidt returning, hopefully, by that time, and the Yankees shopping for arms like Garrett Crochet? Do we believe it? I don't. I don't think they're going to be really involved in that field, but they're connected to high-profile deadline starters, Crochet, Jack Flaherty. I think it's more likely than not that Nestor is traded away instead of retained as some sort of non-playoff factor depth. But here we go. Deadline discussion up for grabs.
Yeah, they got to figure out what to do with him because it's just, it's not it. I know he's coming off a shoulder injury and it's obviously difficult, but you cannot. They have lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've lost 7 of the last 10 games. 8 of the last 10 games he's taken the mound. That's bad. And he's supposed to be good at home. So you get rocked by the Dodgers. I know that's a good lineup, but you got shelled, did well against Baltimore, gave up enough runs against the Braves to lose because the offense is bad. Had that good start against Boston, but now these last 2 against the Rays, you see them one time at Tropicana, and they dominate you. You have a chance to rebound at home. You get crushed even worse. I don't know at this point what they would be able to get in return. It might be a situation like you were saying, get 1 pitcher out, get 2 more in. If that's their thinking in terms of upgrading, then great. But here's where I also am confused because you look at the farm system and Chase Hampton's injured. Everson Pereira's injured, also lost all of his trade value. Will Warren was injured for a bit, right? And then was bad.
No, the worst part is I think he was just terrible.
He was just bad.
Hence the unfortunate part of it. If Will Warren was injured, that would definitely explain away some of the but no, mid-6 ERA, just finally finding his footing a little bit, but 6.42 ERA at the moment.
Yep. Clayton Beeter injured. Yogo, they managed to kill his value with the way that they've been promoting him and sending him down. I don't know what other organization looking at this farm system at this moment would say, yeah, I mean, we'll do a big time blockbuster deal with you, assuming only Spencer Jones is on the table out of these. Because what are they going to do? They're going to deplete the entire farm system by looking to trade for another pitcher. Dominguez is injured, and they view him as a major league player. So I don't know what value that brings to the table. I haven't checked in on Roderick Arias or Lombard Jr. or Brando Maia in a minute, but again, those guys are far away from the big league. So I don't know what interest that is going to have for some of these teams that are looking to perhaps expedite a rebuild. I don't think the White Sox are looking for guys who are 3-4 years away from the majors at this point with, you look at the deal that they made with the Padres for Dylan Cease. It was a bit of a hybrid. They got a couple of guys who were a little farther away. They got former Yankee Drew Thorpe, who's already kicking ass for them and hopefully kind of changing the fortune. So that's first order of business. Second order of business is if they're if they're involved in the discussions for these star-studded pitchers, how many assets do they think they have that they could trade for just one of those guys? And then are they going to upgrade the lineup? The lineup needs to be upgraded. That needs to be the difference here, in my opinion. The starting pitching is good enough. I understand there's been a lot of hiccups with these guys after Garrett Cole return, which was just a bizarre way to kind of start to flounder. Yeah. But longevity-wise, I think this unit is in good shape with what they have. They have big names on the mound. They have guys who can pitch in high-pressure moments. You're probably not the most confident right now in Carlos Rodon because of his regression back to giving up a ton of runs in the first inning or getting off on the wrong foot and having it spiral out of control. Definitely a little bit concerned about Marcus Stroman's ability to pitch deeper into games if you really need him to, because he's been Mr. 5 innings all year. And
he has been lately too. It's like the rest of the rotation has been so incompetent that he goes like 5 1/3, 2 runs.
It looks great.
2 walks, and you're like, all right, I mean, not your fault today. And it's true, but it's really a low bar.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Luis Heel, who's rebounded nicely. But again, what is his remainder of the season going to look like? He's at 102 1/3 innings. That's going to eclipse a career high in his next start or two, I believe. So either way, these guys have proven to some capacity that they can pitch in big games. All of them have delivered multiple times this season. You have Clark Schmidt coming back, but I don't know what it seems to me that the Yankees might be looking to do that because they view pitching as a more important postseason asset.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you look at this lineup and say, okay, if we stock up on pitching, it's another one of those Yankees instances where they're thinking, oh no, this will turn around. Alex Verdugo won't be OPSing 640 the rest of the way. Anthony Volpe won't be OPSing below 700 the rest of the way. Gleyber Torres will figure it out. DJ LeMahieu will figure it out. None of these guys are going to figure it out. It's that clear. Red Sox fans warned us about Alex Verdugo. We turned a blind eye because he managed to get some big hits for us in the beginning of the year, which we loved and we thought would be a delightful breath of fresh air. Reality was all we needed him to do was be what he was for his career. OPS plus of 102. It's all I need. Instead, it's 82, and it's bad. And the way that he has played over the last 2 months, the quotes are, I feel like I'm breaking out of my slump. Why? How? There's no evidence of it.
I think sometimes this gets lost in the discussion of like, you wanted to sacrifice power for contact, and now look what you have. It's like, I didn't want to sacrifice power for contact. I wanted to balance power with contact. And when we're talking about contact, again, we're talking about a 102 OPS plus guy, a 106 OPS plus guy who sprays the ball around the field. Nobody was like, hey, can we please replace power with a guy who can't fucking hit? Nobody said that. Nobody was like, can we just get a guy like Alex Verdugo in here to put up an 80 OPS plus? That's what we need. No one was begging for worse baseball players.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the discourse gets mangled and people are like, this is what you wanted, right? Guy who puts bat on ball. No one was asking for dribblers to second base. You're asking for lineup balance.
Yep. And he brought it. He brought it for a month, 5 weeks, something like that. And then it's been all downhill. And it's another one of those instances where it's inexplicable Yankees regression. Why is this happening? Why is trade acquisition, who has shown consistency and success elsewhere, now becoming a pumpkin on this roster?
The only credit I'll give them is that I thought that if Verdugo started to struggle, Dominguez could slide right in. And I was like, well, that's the one place we have an insurance policy, and that'll be a nice fit. He'll be ready when Verdugo slumps. And then obviously, no, he's not ready.
Yeah, I will say that there has been quite a bit of bad luck with everything that's happened. You have Giancarlo Stanton go down, and then Jason Dominguez goes down right before that happens. So you don't have any solution. You don't have the ability to bring another outfielder into the fold. So even if Stanton was out, you bring Dominguez in, you're like, great, you're getting some outfield reps today. We're switching up the DH, Verdugo, your bench, whatever. But even so, would we have believed that would have been the case? We had the whole thing with DJ LeMahieu this weekend. He goes 0 for 7 in his last 2 games, still rolling over balls, still not coming through when they need him to. Reporters are asking if he's going to get benched. Aaron Boone says, nope, he's earned the right to work through his slump. And then the next day he's benched. And then he says that he could be benched more times this coming week. And there's no unison in the messaging. It's more lying to the fucking media and the fans as it's always been, and it's not solution oriented. I do not trust them. I would not have trusted them to incorporate Jason Dominguez into the lineup properly had he been healthy, had Giancarlo Stanton been out, had Alex Verdugo been slumping. They would have figured out a way to keep Alex Verdugo in there every day and have this charade continue. So even if that's the other thing, even if they do get the proper trade deadline additions, I don't know how Aaron Boone's going to utilize them. I don't know how the front office is going to want to utilize them. because they're doing nothing now. They're trotting the same guys out there who are performing poorly. They're fake benching people. Glaber got benched for 2 days, and it was also because of an injury. DJ LeMahieu gets benched after it was hinted on Friday he wouldn't play in the Sunday game.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no proactivity here. And the reality is that if you just got rid of Verdugo, you get rid of 2 of Verdugo, Torres, and LeMahieu, anybody would be better. Like Oswaldo Cabrera is essentially the same production as Gleyber Torres, and he's more versatile on defense. So you just look at that and you're like, wow, it's not really 5 home runs and 27 RBIs for Cabrera in 76 games. Torres in 96 games is 8 home runs and 35 RBI. It doesn't make a difference. Like, you just need somebody who looks the part in terms of hustle or has some sort of attribute behind them that helps. Like Cabrera is more versatile on defense and is a switch hitter, and it changes the complexion of the team. I think if they just figured out a way to get 2 new bodies to fix 2 out of these 3 problems, it'll make a world of difference. But again, I don't know who they go after.
John Birdie, more horrible luck too.
Yep.
He would be very valuable right now if he hadn't. When he collapsed to the ground at the end of May and couldn't walk off the field in San Diego, it was like, all right, well, that's a ruptured Achilles or whatever. And then they come out and say, no, it's not it. It's, should be 6 weeks. He pulled something. It's like, really? I watched that man die on the ground in a Vietnam flashback. And now all of a sudden, he's had a setback and he's having PRP injections and he's in New York. It'll be a while. But he also hit today. So 2 months, though, that feels, we're coming up on 2 months. That feels about right based on what I saw happen to him out of the box. And if we had him, we're not going to have him by the deadline. It'd be great to have him by the deadline. He'd be getting starts right now. Another reason, not to backtrack, but another just some of it's bad luck. Dominguez goes down and Stanton goes down at the same time. You're unable to balance those things. Cody Poteet, once upon a time, it felt like Schmidt went down, Poteet comes up, Poteet goes down, Cole comes up. You actually were getting lucky breaks in the rotation, but not in the lineup. But sometimes you make your own bad luck. However you feel about this team, whether you think they need 5 new pieces at the deadline, or you think they're not worth saving, or you really believe in a bounce back from 7 different aggrieved parties, whatever your opinion is, it's good to get as much data as possible before entering an event like the trade deadline, where you have to make massive sweeping changes or make the bombshell decision to mostly stand pat and make marginal upgrades because you're not comfortable paying the price. You know what data point would have been good to have? What does your beat Vivas's bat look like at the major league level? Yeah. Even if the amount of data you're able to get is quite small, because you obviously, they didn't call him up prior to July 12th anyway. So the most you could possibly do is 2.5 weeks worth of reps, semi-regular, figure it out. But even 2.5 weeks is more valuable than nothing. It taught us a lot about Ben Rice. You could see right away professional at-bats. Like, am I going to declare him the future starting first baseman in the New York Yankees? Are we going to this offseason decline to sign a first baseman because we believe in Ben Rice? I mean, knowing the Yankees and how they budget, yes, we are obviously going to do that. But, 2.5 weeks, not enough time to actually determine whether that's a good or bad idea, but more than enough time to observe and say, I like what I see. The talent is clear. Now let's foster that talent, see what we have here. Maybe first base not as pressing a need. Maybe they would have been in the Christian Walker sweepstakes. And now we've seen Ben Rice and we know, okay, we don't need to prioritize a first baseman. If a slugging first baseman is the easiest deal for us to complete, we can still do that. But now we know, okay, first base, not our weakest spot. Second base, third base, still incredibly weak. There's an option, a top 10 prospect in the system traded for this offseason, who started the year out and slow, recovered enough to put himself on the map with the month before his called up for a 1-3 game set in Baltimore where JD Davis hit the IL with the flu. That's not real. And how many reps does he get in the 3-game series where he's called up? 0.00. Even Carlos Narvaez got an at-bat in the Rays game on Saturday. Vivas can't get in once in that O's series. He can't start the 3rd game after you've won the first 2.
Crazy.
That one's easy. Because obviously you want to bank these wins, high-pressure series in Baltimore. You don't want to start them on Friday night maybe, even though you might have maybe you should have. Saturday, they kind of blow away Grayson Rodriguez. Huge series win. Vivas should be batting sixth, then starting at second base on Sunday. There's no reason not to. 11:35 game. Give DJ LeMahieu an extra day off instead of making him wake up early before the All-Star break. Nope, demoted immediately after the game, and now we know nothing about him. So while we're trying to fill deadline holes, I would have been upset if they had said, we have Vivas, we don't need to make a trade. But at the very least, we would have known marginally more than we know right now about what we have in Vivas.
Yeah, you could have put Vivas in for the second half of that Saturday Orioles game when you're up 6-1.
And if you keep him on the roster, he could have played the blowout on Saturday against Tampa. Like the fact now he's off the roster, so now they've neutered themselves. They don't have the chance anymore.
Yeah, beyond confused. I was very critical of that just because it's like, what are you doing? What's the point? You're minute and not. We talked about it. I think the last episode or the episode before. They took games off of his plate, and then he essentially went 8 days without playing baseball because the All-Star break is the same for the minor league season. So what are you doing? How does this make any sense? And again, even if you want to win Baltimore games, right? You want to win that series in Baltimore, there is no difference with removing one of these guys from the lineup. Torres, Verdugo, LeMahieu, however you want to restructure for a single day. Removing one of those guys in favor of a top prospect is not negatively impacting this team. All of those guys are performing they are a detriment. So any body in there that could offer something, whether it's a look, whether it's a lefty bat, whether it's a youthful energy, whether it's athleticism, is going to do wonders or help the Yankees better forecast what's to come, because you're not going to be able to trade for 5 new people. You're going to have to work in some sort of promotion hybrid, deadline that manages to incorporate not 5 new players from different teams. Like, that's going to be difficult to do. That's going to be clubhouse altering, chemistry altering. So I don't know why they didn't look how exciting it's been for Ben Rice and the rest of the roster while he's done this. Like, don't you want more of that? Not random guy from Angels who dominates and now fits in with the Yankees. Like, it's going to be hard to also have that number of players change settings from maybe a lower leverage environment. If you're talking about trading with who? Marlins, White Sox, Tigers. You think players from those teams aren't going to be a little bit shell-shocked coming from those markets to New York? It's just what it is. It's what's going to happen. We've seen players from bigger markets come to New York and fail miserably. So I don't know how they again, it's a loss of trust in the process. It's not very constructive right now. For the 5th year in a row, they think they're going to play out of whatever's happening. They're telling us a different story than what we're watching. It's insulting everybody's intelligence, and it's not giving anybody hope for what's going to happen at the deadline. Like you said, deadline 8 days away. Not really any preliminary work. Putting everything off to the last minute. Gonna be more susceptible to bidding wars and higher prices and other teams that maybe go on a run over this next week and say, you know what, fuck it. We're gonna go for it. And we're willing to part with some assets to make it happen. More teams that get in that bidding, less likely the sellers they're not going to want to give the players to the Yankees. It's just the way it is. So they've waited long enough. They watched this slide happen long enough. They opted not to do anything. I understand there aren't that many opportunities out there, but you could do something, anything that helps the outlook for the next few weeks, and they just haven't done it. So I don't know if this can be fixed. You have 2 players who are playing at an MVP level, and the rest of the roster is pretty much incapable. I'll tip my hat to Austin Wells. He's been really the only one. He's getting on base regularly, playing great behind the plate, threw out 3 runners the other day?
Picked off a dude at first and threw 2 guys out at second. We would feel so good about Austin Wells if he was the 7th best hitter in this lineup and he was heating up right now instead of the automatic cleanup hitter because he had a competent month. Yeah.
Again, at least that was constructive in some manner, but that happened a little bit too late. And now we needed a Jose Trevino injury to send some sort of a signal where it's like, hey, maybe Austin Wells should be getting more reps, like we kind of talked about in the beginning of the year a lot. because he finished last season strong. He's a lefty power bat. He needs regular reps as a young player to really get on track. So why is he getting fewer than the prototypical, profiled backup catcher? Don't understand it. So it's again a failure in the process. And you look at like this series, right? Who hit the home run yesterday? Jose Siri.
He homered, Caballero homered and stared everybody down.
Jackson
Randy,
homered.
obviously, Rosarena homered and walked around the bases. It was great. Yeah, they got punked over and over again.
Did Taylor Walls homer?
He, I believe, homered. I don't know. He got a big double yesterday and a big double on Saturday. I obviously tuned out of Saturday's game as soon as the Alex Jackson homer went down.
Yeah, Alex Jackson was batting ninth on that was Saturday, right?
One of the worst qualified hitters in Major League Baseball. Yeah. And that does mean he's still a hitter in Major League Baseball. You still have to pitch to him. I get it. But hit a 3-run homer to basically put that game out of reach based on the current Yankees offense. Do you want to know what Alex Jackson's OPS plus is right now? And again, that's after the 3-run homer from Saturday.
37.
No.
Worse?
3.
I had one of the numerals right.
Yeah, 97% worse than a league average Major League Baseball player. And that's after adding a 3-run game-changing home run in Saturday's action.
Yeah, and this is thankfully we're on this point because this is where I get angry with Aaron Boone. It's comes down to preparation. So the offense doesn't perform, right? That's going to happen some games. We know it's a reality with whatever goes on with this team. It just happens every year at this point.
You just lose.
Yeah. I mean, motivational factor, I think, still is at play. Complacency, lack of discipline. We don't know what goes behind closed doors. I think that's pretty clear, but actions speak louder than words. When players have a bad game, when players give off poor body language, when they botch fundamental situations, like that deserves that warrants some sort of punishment or benching, whatever you want it to be. It needs to happen in order to keep people in check. It doesn't happen. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Jackson homers on Saturday, and you're like, why does this keep happening? Why is this a trend? Why do I feel like the bottom of every fucking order this team faces feasts on us? Oh, turns out to be true because the Yankees in 2024 have given up 14 home runs to the number 9 hitter. That's the most in Major League Baseball. So that's one. Secondly, Randy Arozarena having the worst season of his career to date. That's correct, right?
Ready to leave. Going to be an amazing change of scenery candidate for somebody. But Absolutely. Right now, having a middling year where not very notable.
Yeah, well, guess who he's performing the best against this year?
I have no I have no idea. It's probably the Boston Red Sox, right?
Oh,
gotta be.
You would be close.
Oh.
Nope, not at all. Red Sox, he's hitting. You know the answer. The answer is the Yankees. We're having fun. We're being sarcastic.
Well, and also the Red Sox, by the way, the Yankees end their season series with the Rays today. They play their entire season series with the Rays before the trade deadline, when the Rays will likely sell pieces off and get worse. There's no way the Red Sox have 6 games with the Rays in September, right? There's just no way that's true. Nobody checked the schedule. There's no way that's true. Anyway.
Arozarena, again, worst season of his career. It's bad. 12 games against the Yankees, however, batting .277 with a 1.039 OPS, 5 homers, 10 RBIs, 13 hits, 8 runs scored, 2 stolen bases. You have tape on Randy Arozarena failing against all these other teams. On the year, he's batting .212 with it. I mean, his performance against the Yankees has kept what he's been doing afloat, but he's hitting .212 with a .314 on base percentage. That's going to go down as, and even the .398 slugging. He's turned it around a little bit, 712 OPS with a 104 OPS plus, but again, still stands to be the worst performance of his career to date, and he's having the most success against the Yankees. So I know that there are some players who literally wake up that day and they're like, I'm going to kick the Yankees' ass, and it just happens. And it's in that player's DNA. They could be otherworldly talents. They could be fringe major leaguers. It's just what happens. But for this team to fail to capitalize on getting out players who are having bad seasons and who aren't good talents, for it to be a constant reminder every single series. That falls on game planning. That falls on the manager. That falls on the flow of information. I don't know who. It's not all of these instances cannot be cosmic. That's all I'm saying. A lot of it is just like, what is happening today? I don't understand this. But when it is a league worst trend and when the numbers are completely reversed, when looking at someone's production versus the Yankees and the rest of the league, someone needs to be held responsible. And the other argument to this whole thing is like, a lot of people, they'll sit back and they'll say, well, they're not hitting. And Carlos Rodon's giving up 5 runs in the first inning. Can't blame Aaron Boone for that. Okay, great. So you know what? Then I'm not going to give Aaron Boone credit for when the team's on autopilot going, 23-8. Why does he deserve credit for that? And he gets absolved blame when nobody knows how to play baseball anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, is Aaron Boone the direct cause of a lot of this underperformance? Impossible to pinpoint. But again, you're basically saying no manager ever deserves to get fired because it's just incompetent players.
Yep.
Like, unless a manager like has a scandal or like sets a fire in the clubhouse, that it's just the players. You should trade half the roster. There's no possible way to upgrade. I do think that a manager has less bearing on an individual game and a team's fate over the course of a season than most fans probably believe. But in a world where we do dismiss managers and we do see new faces and new voices come in and change teams' fates and reality, then if, we can't operate in a world where, if we all agree to operate in a world where no manager gets fired, then yes, Aaron Boone should keep his job forever. But if other managers are losing their jobs around the game of baseball and people like Stephen Vogt are stepping in for Terry Francona and immediately changing the Guardians' fate, people like Alex Cora are stepping in twice in Boston, for, was it John Farrell that got fired? Who was the manager?
Yeah,
and then Ron Renicky in 2020. Like, if Alex Verdugo, I'm looking at my wrist, Alex Verdugo's happening. Sorry.
He just gets a hit and it's like runs to first base like the world got lifted off his shoulders. It's like the energy is just, everybody is just sad.
But if Alex Cora completely changed the Red Sox year over year twice, like that's the world that we live in. So I'd at least like to see it. And then if the Yankees make a managerial change that doesn't work, and if it's just another Brian Cashman puppet situation, then fine. I do think Aaron Boone is getting closer to the end of his rope.
Yeah.
I do not think anything is guaranteed for him after the end of this season based on the way this unfolds. I think Brian Cashman will never go away. His stamp will always be on the organization. But I think I risk getting myself in trouble here because I don't think Brian Cashman has been a leading MLB executive for the last 5, 6, 7 years. I think his ego is getting the best of him. But I do think that the Brian Cashman school of management probably has value. I think he's going to make the Hall of Fame as an executive. I think he's an overrated executive, but I don't think he's in the bottom tier of executives for his body of work. And so I think there could be value in Brian Cashman graduating into an emeritus role, handing it off. If he hands things off to Kevin Reese or another guy internally, I don't think that's automatically like a stamp, a death stamp on the Yankees for like, oh, it's just a Cashman disciple. I think a guy who operates with Cashman's principles but has a fresh set of eyes and a more modern way of thinking and less of an ego attached because he doesn't have, 20 years of history to live up to could be valuable. If you ask me, would you rather promote internally or go hire someone, a genius from outside the organization, and remake the Yankees? I would rather hire externally.
Yes.
But I don't think Brian Cashman getting elevated and elevating one of his lieutenants in his place is an automatic loss. I would still say it's time, as long as Brian Cashman doesn't have some sort of, outsized imprint on the roster moving forward. The issue would be that he probably would. So you're never really getting rid of him.
And the issue is the ego because, again, the last 5 years, since 2017, since after 2017, they have passed on all of the top free agents. It's what's happened. And they have not gotten better. And then they put themselves in a situation where they feel like they have to give all that money to Carlos Rodon to secure him. And it ends up being a version of fool's gold. Again, I don't think Carlos Rodon is a terrible Yankee, but if you could have had a number of other guys who are kind of top 10 Cy Young candidates for $27 million. Like, you could have paid Kevin Gossman, for example. You could have maybe went the extra mile to try and sign Max Scherzer. You could have signed Max Scherzer, when he signed with the Nationals. If you really want to go down the road, and
that was my move.
Yeah.
I mean, Scherzer and Bryce Harper 1-2 forever.
Yeah, I don't know how you let Bryce Harper go. You let Manny Machado go. You let Marcus Semien go. You let Corey Seager go. And I'm not saying sign all of them. I'm not saying you need all of these players to succeed, but ego clearly got in the way because the layups were there for how you're designed to operate. You have the most money. You do not develop players. It is historically factual. You do not develop players. We have evidence of it since Brian Cashman took over in 1998. The three most successful players that have been homegrown by the Yankees are Aaron Judge, massive success; Brett Gardner, good player;
middling success;
Anthony Volpe, who is turning out to be not very good. I know we give Volpe a hard time playing shortstop, and playing shortstop in New York at this young of an age is difficult, but he's behind the rest of his peers, as we've seen the last two seasons transpire. So the Yankees don't develop players. It's just the way it is. They might be okay at developing pitchers, but they're more so faceless guys who put up decent numbers and then become roster chum. They're not developing aces. They're not developing closers. They're not developing, elite setup men for the most part. So the fact that they have misallocated their funds like this, it's clear that ego's in the way, and there does need to be Brian Cashman's great in terms of the body of his work. He's made many great moves, but something happened over the last, ever since that ALCS loss to the Astros, where they didn't feel the need to stomp on everybody's throat in 2018 and 2019. They didn't build the roster good enough to be kind of ironclad in the postseason. And then when they realized that was an issue, they didn't make amends when the next class of free agents hit. Garrett Cole, we could talk about that being a great free agent signing. They had no choice. They hadn't signed a pitcher since CC Sabathia to a long-term deal, or Masahiro Tanaka to a long-term deal. You could not let Garrett Cole go. That would have set this franchise back. I don't even know how long. And think about how much they have not succeeded over the span since they've had Garrett Cole. They have not succeeded. The crowning achievement for this team over the last 15 years is taking the Astros to the brink in 2017. That's it. Hasn't gotten better, and they haven't changed the approach. They continue to think they're the smartest people in the room. They continue to think that their process is better than most, even though there aren't any results from it. So there does need to be a change, and especially if there's no positive alterations at this trade deadline without mortgaging the entire future. I don't know how Juan Soto stays. I don't know how he's convinced that things are going to get better. I don't want to be playing. If I'm him, I don't want to be playing my career second. A, your second fiddle to Aaron Judge, and then B, the rest of the cast around you can't play baseball. No, crazy.
It's funny because he and Judge are loving life every time you see him doing the King of New York poses with the crown on. I mean, they seem to be a perfect duo, and then the pieces around them are just not even, in terms of measuring up, like they're not playing the same sport for the most part. Which leads you into, 2017, they had the MLB equivalent of having a great quarterback on a rookie contract. Success ahead of the curve. 2017 more successful than anyone could have imagined. 18 and 19 have to be your playground before you have to pay Judge, before you have to pay the piper. And instead, they weren't. Stanton fell into their laps. The Marlins paid a good deal of that contract. They let it block them from Bryce Harper. They weren't willing to trade for Manny Machado at the 18 deadline, and then they had no interest in signing him after the season. They flirted with Patrick Corbin instead, and I'm glad they didn't land him. But half measures until Garrett Cole, and then it was too late because even after they signed Garrett Cole, half measures around him, the only major league free agent they signed that year was Brett Gardner, and that's left us where we are now, 21, 22, 23, 24, either middling 500 rosters or wild collapses, which leads into just the final argument of this is a major trade deadline. If this team wants to salvage their fates, they're probably going to have to sell some prospects. Like we spoke about earlier, the prospect pool is thinning or injured. Spencer Jones, suddenly not untouchable right now, it would seem. Dangled for Garrett. Crochet is the latest rumor. Also, Skubal. John Heyman said I'd give him up for Skubal, but that's it. Here's what this bothers me for many reasons. I understand Corbin Burnes is a rental, but you have no interest in trading Spencer Jones before the season for a rental in Corbin Burnes. You let the team that's more asset rich than you within your own division pull off that trade. Burnes has been fantastic, going to be a top 3 Cy Young finisher, start of the All-Star game. Then Jones regresses on the field, and now that his value is lower and has been tanked slightly with his first half, you're willing to trade him for a guy in Crochet who, yes, has more years of control. Yes, is spectacular when healthy. But you think Luis Gil's innings limit is an issue? Same deal with Crochet. 12 2/3 innings last year coming off major injury. And if he comes to the Yankees, I don't see a world in which he makes it to the playoffs as a bona fide 6-7 innings starting pitcher, fire-breathing ace. So then you've got Gil, who's a bullpen type. Crochet, who's a bullpen type. Clark Schmidt, who's coming off major injury midseason, is going to be somewhat of a caddy down the stretch. Does he piggyback Stroman? Who makes it to the finish line here? I don't think Crochet is a guarantee to make it to October. So if you're willing to trade Jones for him, I don't know why you wouldn't have entertained it for a rental in Burnes, especially if the asset-rich team in your division got Burnes and is still asset-rich enough to be the favorites for Crochet or Skubal if they're dangled. So credit to the Orioles. They have a farm system that you don't, but that means that when you have a chance to go head-to-head with them, and you do have a chance with your inferior farm to make something happen, you got to take advantage of it, because otherwise you end up selling lower on Jones a couple months later on a target who's less of a perfect fit than Burnes would be for this Yankees team right now. Either way, looking at the deadline, it's tough to say you have to go all in and trade these untouchable pieces, but there aren't that many of them. Dominguez, I'm not moving. Ben Rice, you could convince me, but I'd rather not. And I think the Yankees benefit more from keeping than trading Ben Rice. And Jones is really the only untouchable piece that I would entertain trading. But how many untouchable pieces am I holding off the market? Just Dominguez and Rice? There's like 2 untouchables and a diminished Spencer Jones, who I would say, sure, in the right situation. I don't think the right situation's out there. And I definitely don't think Garrett Crochet is the right situation. Skubal comes along, sure. But otherwise, you're left strapped. Very few prospects in your potential package. And the rest of the league, the Dodgers and Orioles, way better equipped to do damage.
Who else needs to make big moves in the playoff race? Probably the Astros.
I think the Astros have a prime opportunity.
Yeah.
But their farm system's worse than ours.
Yeah, but they'll find a way.
They always do.
They always do. Mariners have better farm system, right?
Mariners have a fantastic farm and don't need their pitchers. Astros will probably trade off the big league roster. There's a rumor that they could. Brian McTaggart said the other day they could entertain trading Jake Myers. Loperfido, they keep calling up and starting him, and he's great, and then they don't play him anymore. Like, we'd be complaining about that if we were the Yankees. Could trade Loperfido. They've got guys.
Yeah. So it's going to be heightened competition with all these teams getting back into the race with the expanded playoff field. And I'm looking at the Yankees farm system, and it's like, I was totally against paying top of market for Corbin Burnes based on how those talks kind of materialized. But yeah, how is Spencer Jones now? Now you're willing to sell him at, in theory, this is probably his lowest value.
He's
now
still just tools.
Yeah.
He was
in a cave.
His highest value was spring training when he was going yard in his first AB and dominating the Futures Showcase or whatever that was. Yeah. Now the K rate has manifested at AA again. It's got the same holes he had last year. The power is real. The raw power is very real, but we're looking at a guy who's, again, in the 700s and OPS at AA with the same swing and miss issues. And now other teams are looking at him saying, yeah, we love him. I mean, that's a really interesting project, but no one is looking at Spencer Jones going, I would, no, that's an immediate plug and play for us. Like, we'll bring Spencer Jones in. He'll be up next year. No problem. Like, people at the beginning of the year were saying the Yankees, why do the Yankees want to re-sign Juan Soto when they have Spencer Jones? I don't think you're going to hear that anymore.
Yeah, you're certainly not. And that the other thing too is, like, are you going to trade away these shortstops? Like, you kind of don't know. I think there's a legitimate argument here. Volpe hit a home run today. It was his first home run in over 2 months. You think that's
the ball in months?
Do you think that's the shortstop? I'm asking you guys. Do you think that he is unequivocally the shortstop of the future? Because I don't. There's nothing. I again, glove has progressed nicely. Bat has the tools. We've seen them, but it's more of the same with how these Yankees regressions happen, whether it's with the coaching, whether it's with the personality fits. I don't know what it is. And like, I can't push all my chips into the middle of the table with Anthony Volpe. So like your assets in Roderick Arias, George Lombard Jr., are you going to be more amenable to trading them, even though they're far off? Like, I genuinely don't know. Like it's a tough situation with how everything's gone down. And again, it's a compounding issue. They could have made moves at the deadline last year to better prepare for this season. They could have made smarter deadline moves in 2022 to prepare for 2022 and beyond, and they didn't.
All that control on Scott Efros, though, and meanwhile, he's got a back injury that's taken Tommy John and a back injury, and you had Boone over the weekend saying, we'll bring him up when he looks more like he, looked and the way he's supposed to look. And it's like, all right, so now we have a extra control of a hobbled guy. That's fantastic. That's good prioritization.
Yeah. So they think they're getting value in these weirder trades and structured deals, and it's like you're just trying too hard. I think it's some of the stuff is plainly laid out for you. Outbid the teams that have a stronger farm system than you and see what happens. Pay $325 million for Corey Seager and say, fuck it, we'll figure it out in 4 years when either Volpe comes up or Seager grows out of shortstop.
And if Seager won't move off shortstop, we can afford to trade Anthony Volpe.
Exactly. It's like they don't get creative with that stuff. Then, the next 2 years, we'll play with nobody in the corner outfield spots. That's smart. Or, oh, yeah, we'll just keep shuffling Oswaldo Cabrera and DJ LeMahieu and Oswald Peraza throughout the infield and see what happens. And it ends up being the worst experiment possible. So there is some sort of lost philosophy here, or Cashman's get sick of getting taken advantage of in free agency in the trade market, which I understand. But again, it's the Yankees. You got to play the fucking game. You're not in the greatest position when it comes to those things, but you got to pay up. And so far you've paid up for a couple of the wrong guys when you look at it over the last few years, and you miss the perfect fits for no other reason than apathy, or thinking that you were fine and that everything would continue on the same path when that's just not realistic whatsoever. Like, we love the 2018 and 2019 regular season Yankees. Did we by any fucking means think that would be the same case for the next 5 years? No. Andrew McCutchen was just getting inserted into that lineup, hitting 15 home runs. It's like, that shit doesn't happen.
And
it's lightning in a bottle. You got to ride with it.
2018 all year long. A lot of people say, people leave 2018 out of the glory days of these current Yankees, and they say 17 and 19. And I think outsiders will be like, that's not fair. They won 100 games. The Red Sox were the class of baseball that year. All year long, April through the end of October. So if you like being the second best team in the American League and the best team is your chief rival and they finish the job, then 2018 was great. Empty 100 wins where your rival owned the narrative all year long. Ultimately, a solid step forward for 2019 and the next man up team that was the most enjoyable for me of this modern era. But 2018, again, beginning to end. And how did October end? Winning a huge playoff game at Fenway Park, taking it back to your house, losing 16-1. Brock Holt hits for the cycle, and then you're dead. They almost kind of sort of came back in game 4 of that DS, but
we were there.
JD Martinez was a better player than Giancarlo Stanton that year. Alex Cora was a better manager than Aaron Boone that year. And it was hard to come out of that year thinking anything positive about the Yankees, because it was like, all right, they gave it their best shot. This is supposed to be full throttle, entering a new era after 2017. And instead, their rival took a massive step forward and got there before you. We were all hoping they might get there someday. We're still waiting for this current core to get there.
Still waiting. And my highlight of this season is I saw Blink-182 last night at Citi Field, and Mark Hoppus opened up the show and he goes, Citi Field. So this is where the Mets lose every night. And I was like, good joke, man. That's all I can hang my hat on right now. I got nothing else. Got nothing else from the last 2 months.
No, as Jeff Probst likes to say on Survivor, got nothing for you. Will Brian Cashman say the same thing to us after the deadline? I don't know. I'm going to be honest, after this hour of smack talking this current roster, I'm still excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than to shake up this stagnant watch right now, because June couldn't have ended fast enough. Somehow it's July 22nd. July feels like June. July sped along, and the All-Star break had a lot to do with it, but felt very repetitive from the month that preceded it. Struggles at home, struggles on the road, struggles on the rotation, struggles on the lineup. And now the deadline at the very least has a chance to infuse this season with something, anything, pieces. And if it's nothing, then rest assured we'll be energized as fuck when we get live on the air after the deadline. But I do believe that it's going to be pretty extensive shopping from Brian Cashman. Will it be the right pieces and the right ingredients? We're not going to know for probably 10, 15 days after the deadline. But, man, I really hope that there's a shakeup here, because I'm not saying that this is as constructed a championship-level team that needs, blood spinning right now. But at the very least, they deserve a chance, because no team leading the wild card should be a stand pat. Like your other teams, I think Yankee fans get unfairly criticized for being too critical of their team, because I think if you had to watch, it's resources not being maximized, and it's a team that should be a bully for everybody else, but instead gets bullied. I think it's perfectly fair to be frustrated with that. But for those Yankee fans who are looking at this team leading the wild card chase right now and going, they should sell or whatever, like that, you are spoiled. They shouldn't sell. They just have to nail the buy. And will they? Not sure, but I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, I just want to stop asking when will this end for 2 straight months. That's all.
Yeah. Should end. This will end right now. Thank you for joining us.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us live on the Yanks Go Yard podcast. Carlos Rodon gets his 10th K of the game. That's 7 good innings. I don't know where that came from. Truly have no idea who pulled that out of Carlos Rodon today. But good job, man. Hopefully see more of that moving forward. And hopefully he gets bumped down a spot in the rotation, not for his own incompetence, but because Brian Cashman goes out and gets some help. And again, infusions everywhere. That's what we need. We will see you right back here Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock Eastern. I'm Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib. Always going to be on Twitter at Adam Weinrib. Never going to not be on Twitter at Adam Weinrib unless I have to drop off Twitter, which is possible. It's a bad platform, and it might just fold. But for now, that's where I'm at. Thomas Carannante, where can you be found on the same platform?
I can indeed be found at Tommy's_takes. Official Yanks Go Yard Twitter account is at Yanks Go Yard FS. Please head on over to yanksgoyard.com. Appreciate you guys reading and tuning in. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Caesars Sportsbook promo code is YGY1000. Get that first free bet on Caesars. That's how they get you, but you can take advantage because it's a pretty big number. So I'll recommend it. I'll recommend it for now. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Hopefully we get a Yankees win here and split. Then we can move on with a clear-ish head. Come out of the break with a split. I don't know. Sure. Just deleting days off the calendar, though. Let's make the days a little bit more meaningful.
Fine. Try to finish it off. Try to attack the Mets. See what you got. But either way, team better look very different after the deadline. Whether it's salvageable or not, let's try. That's the conclusion I come to. How hard can they try with their current farm system? Not sure. But it's above my pay grade, Brian, Mr. Cashman. Go ahead and try something. For Thomas Carannante, I'm Adam Weinrib. We'll see you on Thursday.